Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today we are talking to Scott Hall. And Scott Hall is a comedian and a podcaster. And he also has a bottom to share with us, or, struggle life story stuff. And go figure. Yeah. Most comics have a story.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on, Sean? How are you?
I'm good. Like I said, just getting a start to my day. You're 2 of 7 today, so.
I like it.
Yeah,
there's not a whole lot to do right now as it is.
Right, go hard or go home, right?
Exactly.
So, you and I share some similarities in our stories.
Okay.
We've both been to jail.
Yeah.
We both had struggled with addiction.
Yes.
And we are both fans of Rogan, which I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are, but I'm sure I don't know about you, but for me, he was part of the reason why I started a podcast and actually, started looking at myself in a different light, instead of, I took care of the addiction. I took care of, some of the other problems that I had in my life, but I still had these pockets of bad behavior, the character defects, the way that I treated people that was still very much present in my life.
Yes.
And around the time when I started listening to him is when I really started getting introspective. We kind of was an introvert, and I looked to myself, but I really started looking more to myself and where the problems were lying, instead of looking over here. Oh, it's you, or it's you.
Yeah.
I suck because of everybody else, not because I don't put the time and the time into it and not be lazy. So
exactly.
Let me stop talking. I have a problem with doing this sometimes. I just
no.
Go. So tell me about it. Tell me about your story. Tell me about you.
No, I love that. That's funny that you say that about the Rogan thing and just about accepting the idea that I got, it might have come from a Rogan podcast or maybe a book I read, but it was right around the same time I started really getting involved with Rogan. Or just, kind of paying attention more than just having it on in the background, was the idea of radical responsibility, which is like you just said. Just the fact of all right, everything is my fault. But if everything is my fault, that also means that I have the power to fix it as well. So I found that through watching that, I think he might have had Jocko Willink on. He was like a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, I know.
He was talking about that. And ever since I kind of adopted that concept, because, I kind of don't know where to start. I'm going to jump all over the place. But we'll start from the beginning. Yes, Rogan. I'm a big fan of Rogan, and the radical responsibility, I think, came a lot from, he seems to be someone that I looked up to, because he seems like, when you watch Rogan, he seems like he's got it figured out. Do you know what I mean? He just always seems very at peace. He seems very relaxed. You know what I mean? He's always very logical. And I know I'm sure if you run hills 4 hours a day, it'll get some of that anxiety out. But that was always something that I struggled with in addiction. And I think, it stems from childhood. I was just never comfortable, adopted. That didn't really go well. Everything's worked out now as far as my family goes. When I got sober and after jail, we worked everything out. But initially, I was kind of spent a lot of time in my room. I was really anxious around my family and my mother, my father, just because as there was arguing, everything was like my fault. I wasn't exactly a good kid either. So I know that I definitely have to take responsibility in that. But it manifested a lot of anxiety and just uncomfortability around people that I guess you should be comfortable being intimate around, like family members, girlfriends, anyone that got close to me. I kind of, I found a way to put up a barrier just because, it took a long time to understand that's why. But, you look at someone like Rogan, he just seems very logical and very relaxed. And I never had that level of comfortability. So when I first started watching his podcast, I was just, I looked at the guy and I was just like, oh man, like what it must feel like to just be able to sit and like think clearly and just without freaking out about what people are going to think or people are going to say or this and that. So yeah, I was a big fan of Rogan too, man. It was awesome.
Well, it's almost with him. It's almost like since I grew up watching him on Fear Factor. That was one of my favorite shows. Yeah. Plus, they played a lot of reruns in that when I was in prison and doing my in the TV room when I was fighting my case. So I don't know. I felt comfortable with him, and in a lot of ways, I think what his popularity is that like guys like me and you, we can identify with him. Like we see ourselves in him, versus or maybe we see that we have the potential to possibly be there. You know what I mean? Because he looks like a guy like us.
Yeah. And the podcasting thing, and one of the questions that we get in pre-interview stuff, why do you want to do podcasting? A reason when I first started my podcast, it was a lot about my first episode I had gotten. So anyway, I'll give you a quick backstory. Is that I kind of, I was kind of screwed up through high school, didn't really know what I was going to do. Ended up joining the military because I didn't have a whole lot of options. Never good in school, always a class clown. I was running around, sneaking out at night, that kind of thing. And a lot of that was, I didn't get along with my parents as well, so it was just combative. After that, joined the Army. Did that did reserves, but I just did it to get away. Did that for a little while, kind of just trailed off, got discharged honorably, even though it probably shouldn't have been. And maybe 4 months out of that, you know what I mean? I'm a young kid, never done anything. I had a signing bonus, 20 grand. Walking in, never had anything in my life, and I didn't earn it. I mean, basic training, you earn it. I'm not saying that, but like, it's a small price to pay for 20 grand on the street as a young kid. It's not. It wasn't like hard work over years, so I'm blowing it. Never had I'm buying new shoes on a whim, ridiculous. So I blow through that. In that process, start drinking pretty heavily. End up losing my license for, I think, speeding or failure to appear, something like that. I ended up racking up probably about, I would keep getting caught driving on suspended right after I got out of the Army. So I would get it, and I'm likable. I'm a good talker. I'm a nice guy. Which is, it sounds like a benefit, and it is, but it's been the lack of consequences I had as a young adult has been my biggest detriment, because I was nice. And so they would take me in and they'd be like, oh, you're like a vet. Like, you seem, even if I was a little buzzed or something like that, I was just always very nice. So they would always let me go. All right, here's your court date, whatever. And I would just never go. And failure to appear is not something they're going to come get you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So fast forward, maybe about a year, I'm drinking pretty heavily, maybe a bottle of wine a day. I'm dabbling in drugs when there's like around it, obviously, harder drugs, cocaine, that kind of stuff. And, when I kind of pills, whenever I get my hands on, not that I was ever a big guy, but it was just like if someone had it, I was taking it, whatever could get me away from my reality. And so I moved down, which is a horrible decision. My girlfriend I was dating in high school, who dated me through the Army, we broke up. We get back together, pretty much so that I could have a place to be. And I didn't say that. So I go down to Virginia Tech. That's where she's at. I end up one night taking her car. I've suspended license. And I've been told 27 times not to drive at that point. And I go and I get two handles of like the cheapest vodka I think I could find at the time, because I didn't have a job, didn't move down there with a plan. And I'm driving around. I drink 1.5. So 1.5 handles, and I'm driving along this thing. I black out. I wake up and I had driven a mile along a country road, scraping up against a cattle fence.
Oh.
Yeah, whole mile. It was bad, dude. It was bad, man. And so I wake up and I'm just, smoke and the clinker's on, and like I don't think the airbags went off. I couldn't get out of my driver's side door because it's lean. The cattle fence was down kind of an embankment, so it was like a little steep off the road. So it's kind of like this. So the passenger or the driver's side door is leaning up against the cattle fence. So I get on the passenger side, smoke. I'm trying to like rev the tires. I'm looking at it like, I'm drunk, so the car doesn't look as bad. Yeah. In my, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't get it out, drive it home, make up something. I'll lie about it like I always do. And the cops pull up. So they come up, and I was super cool with them. I was like, I'm drunk as soon as they came up. I was like, they didn't handcuff me. They didn't even handcuff me. And again, it's just the lack of, But they were super cool. They were kind of laughing because I was very like, what am I going to do, man? I've always been, at least when something ever happens, I just go, all right, he got me. So they were cool. I refused to take a breathalyzer. They sat me in a room. This guy talked to me for like 20 minutes. And long story short, I moved that, that incident obviously screws up everything with the girl I'm dating because it's her car and this and that.
Yeah. Right.
It took they towed it and I lied about it, and she didn't find out about it until after she went to pick up the car like 2 weeks later. I lied about it till the day of because, of course, why would I not run from it? And so I moved back up here, which is DC, from Southern Virginia to get sober. And I think I had like 2 weeks or something like that, just off booze. Obviously, like, what are you going to do? Call my parents. They had to have a meeting. My family had to have a meeting with each other to discuss whether it was okay for me to come home. So that's the kind of terms we were on. So I'm there for about 2 weeks, sitting at home one day. Cops knock on the door, take me back down. I had a warrant. They drove 4 hours to come get me, drove me 4 hours down. And I did a year. And it was, I think I could have taken 2 felonies and done like a month. Or it was like 3 misdemeanors in a year. Because part of the thing in the car, it was like there was a larceny charge or something like that. It all got dropped to misdemeanor, so I did the year. And I don't know how you feel about it, but that year in jail was the best thing that ever happened. Well, not up front, but in the long term, I needed it.
Because you're calling it jail, so I already automatically know that you were probably in a county.
No, I didn't go to prison. No.
Yeah, you're in a county jail and a city jail situation. You probably had being there for a year. You experienced guys that are in transportation. They just got maybe violated. They've been to prison before. Coming and going. And I bet you've heard that. Oh my God, I just can't wait to get back to prison. Send me back to prison.
Absolutely. Because it's almost, I mean, I know the amenities, and we were in Southern Virginia, so it was kind of a bigger one. So we were like maybe a little bit bigger than some jails.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, because there's more freedom in prison than there is in a county jail or a city jail. Yes. or whatever that is. So no, I don't. I would not want to go back to a city jail. But I mean, it just kind of was what it was. Yeah, it gives you pause. It gives you time to actually take a look and reflect on what you did and when I first got man, I'd been to jail before. I've been, you know what I mean? But I'd never been locked up with the mindset that like, this shit's real. I ain't getting out. I'm not going nowhere for a while. This is my new reality. And I literally, and it was probably around I gotta say probably the 4th day that I had been locked up. I was laying on my bunk, and it was an open dorm setting, right? But there was bunk. They weren't bunked up this high. There were single bunks, single beds in a row, like 4 rows, and there's a little partition in between each one. And I was laying in bed, and I'd been sleeping the whole time because I'd been up on a run when I got arrested, right? And so immediately I went to sleep for like 3 days, would wake up to piss shit, take a shower, eat, but I go right back to sleep because, methamphetamine's
dude. I was in Southern Virginia, man. My whole block was everybody, man, running from the cops, whatever. I would, they get in, and I just be like, 5 days. I'll talk to them in a week. There's really no point in getting to it,
So my mindset was really screwed. I remember I was just laying there, and I resigned to the fact that this is it. This is my reality for a while. And I curled up into a ball and just started bawling, man. But had to be quiet because it's an open dorm. I didn't want anybody to hear like, oh, listen to this little bitch over here crying because he's in jail, but that's how I felt. I was like, fuck, man, I really screwed my life up, I cried in
the shower.
And it was one of those ones, man, where it was coming straight from the bottom of your stomach, and it was like I was cramping up because I'm trying to hold it in, and it won't. It was like, fuck, dude, it's coming out.
Yeah,
like
I know.
It's open. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it sucks.
Well, that's the interesting thing about that too, and I've said it on my podcast is, and I say this a lot, is that what helped me with starting comedy and starting a podcast, because after I got out of jail, I went into restaurant management. I'll just finish. I'll get to where I was. So I got out of jail. It was the best thing that ever happened. My biggest problem was, I felt those feelings mostly when I visited my family or when I got a letter from them or something like that. I see them through glass, and it's like, I was like, man, like that, Yeah. And so you think that that's what your life is. You're like, well, I'm going to be back here every 5 months to you see all these other cats, like they know each other when they get there. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Well, you guys are so excited. But you think like, all right, this is it. This is my, nothing good can happen now. This is my life now. And that's just not the case. So I got out and I didn't know what to do. I'd only served, the only real job I ever had was restaurant industry. So I went back to serving because obviously it doesn't matter what you do when you're a server, they don't care. And it just worked hard enough to where I got promoted to management. I caught the eye of, there was an owner's daughter was working. There was a small Irish place it's actually a big place in DC. It's closed now, but it was an Irish place. His daughter worked there, saw how hard I was working, got bumped up to management. And at that point, in my life, everything was kind of going wrong. It was the first time that anyone was like, hey, you're doing a good job. Here's something. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wasn't afraid of hard work just because of the Army. I think that's programmed in me from something. Like if someone asks me to do something, I just do it. It's more about me motivating myself. I have an issue with it. But so anyway, long story short, I ended up being the GM of multiple. I got bumped up to GM at that restaurant, then moved on to a bigger company, and then moved on to another big company, and 6 figures. And I was I think 26 at the time. I'll be 30 in July, and or maybe 27, 26, 27 at the time, and I started doing a lot of drugs again because it was, again, money and the work didn't bother me. And I fell into the habits of being Mr. Cool Guy. So I went from I'm a giant piece of shit who will never do anything with his life and, a lot of self-loathing to being able to hand out a business card that says I'm better than you, which is essentially what it was at the time. I say that my best.
I'm going to break it. It doesn't help your case that you're a good looking dude. So the doors are immediately always open for you. You know what I mean? I've always, that's just how it goes, man.
Same thing for you, I'm sure. Yeah, dude, you get, it's these advantages that are, it hurts, man. It does. And that would boo-hoo me. I'm not saying I'm not complaining, but I took every angle I could get, I guess, in life. You know what I mean? I used whatever I had. And being, not being bad looking is definitely one. And being a smooth talker is kind of a little bit of that too. So, I get to the point where I'm running multiple restaurants in DC. I can get into the clubs for free. People, because they're popular. I don't want to say whatever. I mean, they know, but they're popular. I go in with a hat. They're like, oh, he's the GM. He's the RM of this company. So I'm going into the clubs. You go to the DJ booth. People are giving you cocaine. And so I'm spinning out of control. and end up like overspending money with the company. So I'm in debt to the company, like $2,500. They don't know anything about it.
No.
Just because I'm like, yeah. So I quit, and I quit. You know what I mean? I put in my and I didn't like the company either. I knew that I was spiraling, and I had so much drama in my life at the time. And I was just like, I don't know what to do, but I can't be doing this.
Yeah.
And so I was just so unhappy, and also I knew I was going to get like reamed out for the money thing at some point. So I ran away.
Yeah.
And and we figured everything out. It was never anything. All that stuff's never as bad as you think it's going to be. What drove me, the anxiety of having that conversation with them was like, look, I misplaced 25, dude. And we did like 70 grand on one day sometimes. So it's like 2,500 in a grand scheme of things wasn't a big deal. But I worked myself into an anxiety that I would use, drinking constantly. Sometimes I would come to work with a briefcase, and I would have a small bottle of vodka in my briefcase, of like Ciroc, and I would just be in the office, man. There were times where I was at a restaurant GM at Expo, and it'd be a full brunch, like 400 people in the restaurant, and I had a Voss water bottle, and it'd be half water, half vodka.
Oh.
And I'd work for hours on like the most difficult, like my tolerance was ridiculous, and so I just, it was just that habitual for years. And when you're succeeding, it's hard to break that habit. Like I'm getting drunk every night, but I'm still getting promoted. It's like, oh, what am I doing wrong? I'm a genius.
Yeah. I figured out how to be able to party and get promoted and paid.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, if I just work hard. So then I would use an excuse. I would stay overnight at the restaurant, and I'd sit there and I'd do lines at like 2 a.m. with my laptop. I'd do a couple bomb stops, get work done. And I was just crushing it. I'd get more work done than anybody, but it would be a little off, some misspellings, this, that. They're like, were you drunk when you were there? I mean, the big idea is great, like the server manual, this, that, but things are all out of place, little stuff. And obviously that snowballs. So by the time I leave that last company, I'm at my wit's end. I was making money, so I had money in the bank. And I pretty much I decided I was stopping drinking before I quit. So I'd stopped drinking, but I didn't stop doing cocaine. Because drinking is the problem, right? And so I stopped drinking for like 3 months, and I'm doing. I mean, at one point, after I stopped drinking 3 months, and the cocaine use is building up, I leave the restaurant, and in between this, like I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm sitting in my very expensive apartment, which I'm every month can't afford because I don't have a job. And, and that's building up, and I'm avoiding my roommate. I'm just sitting in my room, and I wouldn't leave my room for days. And I had 2 separate cocaine dealers. I would have one drop off in 8 Ball on like Tuesdays, and another one drop off on Thursdays, so that they didn't know. And I would stay in my room, and if I was hungry, I would go to Bobanitas, which is like a diner around here. It was across the street, and there's a gas station next door, so I could get cigarettes. And I could get like a milkshake if I could eat. And long story short, I mean, it's just, I keep saying long story short, but I eventually couldn't afford that apartment, had to leave. That didn't work. You know what I mean? I ended up owing like $1,800 by the time I left. And I had to pay that off over the next few months, moved back with my parents. And at that point, me and my parents were kind of on good terms. A couple of years of me being a restaurant GM, they didn't see all the other side of it. I didn't tell them all that. But I moved back to my parents, and I sobered up off the NA. I relapsed a couple times on booze. I'm currently sober off that too. But the cocaine, I stopped almost immediately after that, just because I was in such a place of, there are times where I'll get, amped up, and I'm laying on my bedroom floor looking under my door to see if like maintenance people are like in my living room. Because it was just, and I was like days. And so, I go home, and I think I started reading. I can't remember what clicked. It might have been The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, or Eckhart Tolle. But something clicked. And Eckhart Tolle is awesome. But
I discovered him in prison.
Yeah, a lot of people do. I got the book sent when I was in jail, and I was just over my head. I wasn't ready to accept it. But so I started reading that. It might have been a podcast, but I just was like, I'm gonna do a podcast. I feel like I'm in a place I'm gonna do a podcast. I don't know. And I was in my old high school bedroom at like 20, 28, whatever, I'm 30 now, so 27, maybe late 27. And I did it in my bed, in my old high school bedroom, on my iPhone, like with a, earphone cord. And I did it for an hour, and it was awful. And let my dad listen to it, and he goes, "You have a good voice." That's what he said. And so no compliments on it was probably very embarrassing. And anyway, the podcast kind of developed into, I did that for a year, and I got this is what I would talk about how, you think circumstances in your life are forever. We always identified, like when I was in jail, I thought, that was going to be my life. When I was a restaurant GM, I was like, I'm Mr. Cool Guy. Like, I'm a business guy. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wear suits. I had my whole future in my head. And it changes like that. You know what I mean? And you have the ability to change it too. So when I started podcasting, and I didn't even know I had those thoughts or ideas until I started talking. So I would do an hour every day. Like, the podcast would just be an hour of me by myself yapping. I would cry and this and that and get very involved. Then I worked up the nerve to get on stage, and yeah, it's been 2 years since. So, and it's taken off a lot more than most people in 2 years. I think just because the chasing of authenticity and people who have been through life, like you, and I'm a big advocate of the fact, or a big proponent of the fact that, I think to have true empathy, you have to have gone through something. I don't think, people might, I told one of my friends he's very Christian, this, and that has nothing to do with it, but he's very loving and he's very this and that. He prides himself on that. And I told him that one time. I was like, I think that I might be a little bit more empathetic, like all the stuff I've been through. And he was like, how does that make you empathetic? And because I understand. When I look at someone who's struggling, I know how they got there. And I know that they could be somewhere else. And I know I am that guy. I am that girl. I am, you know what I mean? That is me. I have that. We all have this capacity to be the person that we think is lower than us or above us. It's just, going through those experiences and coming out on the other end, and just, you're never on the other end, I don't think. But just being mindful of that constantly is I think it's changed my life profoundly.
Yeah, I have so there are those set of people though that, like, sometimes when I'll talk about my story, because I'm in a union, right? A laborers union, not a laborer, but I'm a mechanical insulator by trade. And I'm very involved in my local. And so when I would say stuff like that, there would be some guys that, because there are that set of people that don't get in trouble and don't do anything. Yeah. They toe the line, and they, go through life and do what they're supposed to do. And that's good. But they often don't understand, or they get upset when you put that out there, like, hey, I did this, and this is where I'm at. And they're like, they just don't understand it. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, you think you should be rewarded for going to jail? What, all of us had to do this. What makes you so special? But I mean, everybody's messy, man. Everybody's got their own shit,
I've gravitated to, well, thankfully, the reason I think I gravitated toward it's always been the thing I used to pretend to do in the shower. It was comedy when I was a kid. I didn't work up the nerve to do it till later in life. But, it's a set of people that are not like that. They've experienced, everyone's weird. And we go up and talk about it. So it's been super cool for me to be around people that, like, they know all this and they love it. They want to hear stories. And they don't judge. They're like, you're a good dude. But they're just fascinated. It's not, they don't, I think people that have never done anything wrong, especially ones that are uppity about it, they think because they've never gotten in trouble, it makes them a good person or a wise person or something like that. It's like, it doesn't mean, that has nothing to do with your identity, the same way me going to jail in the past has nothing to do with who I am now. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not related. So I think it's scary sometimes when people are like, when I was the GM of the restaurant, like I'd have people that were older than me, and I'd be their boss. And, they might be like, oh, I got out of jail a year ago. I hear that. Yeah. But I was good at my job, so they would always be like, I'm so surprised. And that's I love that. But the type of people that are are you living life? Have you lived life? If you woke up at 9 to 5 and you did that, and, you take your summers off, and you do your, what's comfortable your whole, did you live? I mean, that scares me. That scares me. So those people,
I was exposed to people like that when I was out there selling drugs and doing my thing, right? There would be, so, I mean, I'm not going to try and glorify it, but I mean, I spent a lot of time in strip clubs, which means, you know, if you spend a lot of time there, you're selling drugs there, you're going to obviously hang out with the girls that are there, not because you're sleeping with all of them, but I mean, it's just the way it goes, you know? And so I'd have all these girls from the clubs that would come over, hang out. There was a set of twins that lived, like right in my same complex around the corner, right within like 2 minutes away. So, I mean, I had tons of their friends would always be over. And there was this one guy. All right. Well, there was two of them actually, but one of them was a straight-laced dude. He was an ER doctor, right? And he had gotten hooked on prescriptions. And I guess these doctors, they have insurance plans that cover them for shit like that. So like if they get hooked on drugs, this insurance will kick in. And he was making like $10,000 a month getting paid from this insurance, right?
Who gets the doctor gets the insurance?
Yeah, the doctor gets 10,000 because he's paying for this premium for this insurance in case, you know, kind of like, you know, like some people insure. Yeah, in case he gets addicted.
Oh wow!
So he did, and he was just as normal. Like you would never even think, right? It's just it's crazy, man. Even the people that think that they're not gonna that they're above all of that, you know, everybody's susceptible. You know, it's just sometimes people, and he was one of these guys that went and did this whole thing through his whole life, and he did the right thing. And then once he got into a position, then he just went buck wild and couldn't handle it. And it's the reverse of us. Okay. So when we really didn't have anything, we kind of went buck. And then, when we were able to actually have something, now we're a little bit smarter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, a little bit. I still feel like I have a propensity to burn my own house down. Like I find it, you know, I have a girlfriend that I've been dating for a long time. I was her boss at the time, and I hired her, and she's a competitive lifter, doesn't drink, never done drugs. She's actually, funny enough, she actually works in DC for the crime lab. So
that's funny.
And when we were dating, you know what I mean? When we first started dating, I was smoking weed, and you know, I still smoke occasionally, but for comics and stuff. But it's I still find myself, even though I'm happy and like we just got a pet and like an apartment, and things are starting to normalize.
Ooh, taking
I'm
steps.
starting to, like, freak out. Well, she's my best friend.
Yeah,
she puts up with everything. When I started comedy, she goes, "You're funny. You know what I mean? You work your way up a bit, you'll be fine." So she's been super supportive. And we got a cat. I got a cat like 2 days ago for my own sanity. But I don't know if you have this, but it's something I have to fight every day, not to just like push people away. And with all this stuff that's going on, you know what I mean? Like, let's say I get money from a comedy gig, not now, obviously, because I don't know when we're getting back on stage. But should I pay the rent, or do I go?
Oh, okay.
Because now I'm not, I don't drink and I don't do hard drugs. And so it's like, do I go buy a video game? Like, feed my addiction? Is it food? Sometimes I'll be at Costco and I'll be up till 3 o'clock in the morning just eating. Like,
yeah.
So I still have a propensity to kick myself, just detriment myself for some reason, because I'm more comfortable in that headspace. And I'm still trying to work on that.
So I definitely want to get we got about 5 more minutes and we're going to have to start wrapping it up. But I want to get to the comedy thing, because I've been thinking, man, I'm just like, I got so many stories from my addiction and using days and all of that. And I've always wanted to do it, but I just don't, you know what I mean? It's like, to me, I don't understand. Like, I listen to Rogan and he's talking about, because he really wants people to do that, because he wants people to try it out. But premises and all these other things, like how to write comedy, it's like, I don't understand it. And I guess some people just say, well, you can't really understand it until you get up and try it.
It's true. And I you know what I mean? I started watching comedy when I was in high school in like the 90s, when Comedy Central was putting out those half hours of like Jim Gaffigan when he still had hair, and Mitch Hedberg, and like, they would just be, it was the only place you could see stand up, and it wasn't popular. You know, I'd have my friends over after high school, and I'd show them stand up, and they're like, why are you even? And so I just say that to me, like, I've been in depth when podcasts started. I was obsessed, and I've been obsessed with comedy forever. And so when I got on stage for the first time, you know, I thought, I know all this stuff. I'll be all right. The first time I got on stage was awful. Blacked out. I pretty much yelled at the audience. I did a horrible joke about my ex-girlfriend getting hit by a car, and it made no sense. And I remember the host after I got off he didn't even say anything. It wasn't even a joke. It was, okay, which is like the worst thing, because he didn't even, it wasn't even good enough for him to make fun of. About that. But, you know, starting in comedy is not, I still don't feel like I have it figured. I mean, I know that 2 years in, you're not going to have it figured out. But I mean, you hear Rogan say it, he still doesn't think he has it figured out. But my best advice is just to get on stage and don't stop getting on stage. And I know that's like what everyone says. Move the mic stand out of the way is like another one that you can just start on. But the big thing, I think, as far as like writing, and you'll learn technical stuff, and people will you can buy a book that'll teach you how to like write a setup, write a punchline, write a story. But the main thing is not to limit yourself, because, you know, it's like, so I think sobriety too, the only thing that's helped me, because I didn't go to meetings to get sober or anything like that. I was just like, I don't want to be this person. And more so, I wanted to be myself. I have this deep need to be this person that I've always been shutting off and drowning in alcohol and drugs. And so when I did it with comedy, the best advice you can have is just be yourself, regardless of what people think, regardless of what your union buddies who are assholes or like anyone who doesn't like our stories. And I rub people the wrong way. There are people that are shocked. And like, I'll make an old lady like go from hating me to loving me, like, you know, but it's the only thing that you have in the world, I think, is how you see the world based on what you have. Your creativity comes from the experiences you had, your parents, how you grew up, where you grew up, what you did wrong, what you did right. And if you filter that because people aren't going to like it or this or that, you're dulling the only thing that you have that's unique to you. So if I had comedic advice, that's what I would give. Just be yourself. Don't be afraid to do what makes your buddy laugh. Do what makes you laugh. People try to change their bits for the audience, and it's like, you're the authority. You're the one with the microphone. You tell them why it's fun. And eventually you'll figure out how to explain, because it's really just trying to get, like, if I'm telling you a story, it's just you have to have the same image that I do in my head. So it's like, okay, now my job is to try to figure out how I get that into your head.
That's a good explanation, and I appreciate it,
dude. Man, get on stage, man. Just Google an open mic. Most comedy things or most comedy mic. I mean, you'll find some assholes, but most comedy, especially in California, man, they're all over the place, dude.
Yeah, where I'm at, there's I got San Francisco. I've got there's one in Pleasanton. There's stuff that's all over right now.
Bars not right now, but whenever you get the chance to.
Whenever
just get on stage, man. It's so good for you. It's so good for you. And it'll make you feel less crazy when you tell a story that nobody in your normal life feels like they want to hear because it's painful or it's weird to them. You get on stage and tell 20, 30, 80, 100, 200 people that story and they all laugh. You go, I'm not crazy. You go, I'm not crazy. I'm not weird. There are people that are like-minded. And that's the, like, my love for it comes from that.
Yeah, I feel like we can talk for a long. I feel like you and I can probably back and forth for about a good 2 hours about you know, our lives and life and, you know, our philosophies and what we've learned. So I mean, I imagine I'll probably have you back on, or if you ever want me on yours, we can work something out. Why don't you go ahead and plug your places and where people can find you?
Nowhere live yet. But my Instagram is Scott Hall Standup, at Scott Hall Standup. That's where I put up most of my stuff. And my podcast is What's Your Deal? What's Your Deal with Scott Hall on YouTube and on Instagram as well. That's it.
All right, great. And then, like I always forget to do this, I have you write what 2 books that you would recommend in podcasts. And dude, I always forget that. It's all the way at the bottom, so I never get to it.
Oh, you're just getting into it? Rogan, obviously. I just think the guy, man, he's insightful. And if you've never, he gets a lot of heat for being bigotry or whatever like that. But it's very rare that you get to hear someone have a long form conversation with thoughts. We're in a society of headlines. So if you want to have your mind challenged or just dude, scientist, this, that, anything you can think of, Rogan. You Made It Weird is Pete Holmes. He's a comedian. But it's very like this. He's very Buddhist-like. He's very ego. So he has these comedians on, and he dives deep into like, well, what they have going on, the ego, what they have going on. It's very spiritual. I love it. And it's, you know what I mean? It lets you know you can be fun and also be serious at the same time, because he gets into all that stuff and they're joking about it. Horrific things sometimes. They're having fun with it. So that's a great one. The books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was probably my introductory to, I read Ram Dass and stuff while I was in jail. And it was, I got it, but it was, a little heady. You're kind of jumping right in. And Tai Chi Min, which is like an Eastern philosophy thing too. But The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is like plain language. It's modern day. And he kind of just lets you know, like, everyone has different goals. So it kind of let me know that not to compare myself to everybody. Everyone has different ambitions. Everybody's different. And then once I got into that, then I got into Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. And that's just pretty much explains to you that all your suffering and all your anxiety and everything that, it all comes from within. And a lot of it's ego telling you you're not good enough, telling you, you need to be this, you need to be that, you shouldn't have done this or shouldn't do that. But no one else is thinking about that. Nobody has any answers. And all those thoughts are just coming from your own head. So, all four of those things have been super beneficial to me. And they're things I go back to too when I'm struggling.
That's awesome, man. And you'll be able to find all those and links to those books in the show notes and everything to find you in the show notes as well. So, hey, man, I appreciate your time and thank you. I'm going to be checking out some of your comedy. Hopefully you got some sketches on your Instagram that I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize in advance.
Right on, man. All right, well, have a good one, brother.
Thanks so much, Justin. All right, Sean.
All right, bye.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved to connect to the show. Book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.